This is Paul. I'm so hopelessly ADHD, I can't stick to any one thing, and I get so distracted that Algo served me up a video by Mary Spender, who is a musician, and it was a video on Led Zeppelin, rock gods or monsters. And I don't consider myself a particularly big fan of Led Zeppelin. I could probably only like Stairway to Heaven and maybe one or two other songs I can mention. But somehow I got sucked into this video and I haven't seen the rest of it because you got to subscribe to Nebula or this other platform. But what I did was pick up the audiobook of the Led Zeppelin biography. If you might remember, I did a biography of Jerusalem, and and so I've been actually going through this biography of Led Zeppelin and sort of being fascinated by it. I should probably say that I probably started down this path when The Rest is History did an episode on disco. Now, disco was hitting in the 70s. I finished junior high in 1976. I vividly remember the bicentennial. I remember when Saturday Night Fever came out, although I didn't see it in the theater. I was a little young, and my parents were good parents, and so I didn't go to see R-rated movies until I was 17. But that sort of got me thinking about the relationship between music and culture. And so then I went down this thing with respect to Led Zeppelin, and now I've been going down all sorts of other YouTube side trails. Rick turned me on to Rick Beato a while ago because Rick was watching Rick Beato. Rick does play the guitar, although I've never been able to get him to play the guitar on stage at Living Stones, maybe because of the very high standards that we maintain for those we allow on stage at Living Stones. If you don't recognize those standards, you really do have to keep up on the Freddie and Paul show. But Rick Beato, so I haven't seen a lot of his videos, but then I caught a video yesterday that I finished watching, which I found fascinating. So Rick Beato makes this video with a buddy that he knew all along. Rick Beato's just about exactly my age. I think he's a year older, and his buddy works in the live music industry. And his buddy was basically talking about how music is changing, and part of what's happened with respect to music. I got into this with Jordan Hall today, and I'll play a little edited clip from that talk. I had just an outstanding conversation with Jordan Hall today. I was a little nervous about how that would go because I would regularly listen to John Vervaeke and Jordan Hall talk, and I would often just not really quite be able to figure Jordan Hall out. But every now and then something would sort of break through, and I'd think, oh, that's brilliant. And then after he got baptized and became a Christian, I began listening to him in these podcasts and thinking, I can understand him, at least when he talks about things that I know something about. So my conversation with him went, I thought, really, really well today. It's in No Wait, No Ads. I'm kind of developing a rhythm. I'll probably post it. The reason I like holding these videos till Monday is because if I do a live stream Friday and I do my rough draft for Sunday and I take care of any end of the week Living Stones things, it's kind of hard to have a video ready to go for Monday. So it's kind of nice to have a conversation in the can and let it go Monday. I'm also discovering that I really like sort of, when I do a big conversation like this with Jordan Hall, I like sort of sitting on it over the week. And you'll notice that I make little clips. I did this for Gavin Ortland. I make these little clips, and that's sort of a good way of having me sort of go over the video and think about the video more and think about the conversation more. Every now and then I go back and I'll listen to something that I recorded years ago, usually not any of the monologue or commentary videos that I do, but usually a conversation, and really enjoy it. And one of the things I really should do someday, probably after I retire, is kind of go through the conversations and pull out things that have sort of endured and are salient. Anyway, so I've been doing a lot of thinking about music and culture and the way that music and technology sort of connect and the way that music and industry sort of connect. I should probably pause this here and maybe I'll insert the Jordan Hall conversation here. So then I found this It probably sounds like I spent a lot of time just poking around on YouTube. Actually, it's just sort of all kind of incidental. Bang! Oh, there's something interesting. Bang! And then, oh, Freewheeling. That's a channel with only 17,000 subscribers. Good. I like small channels. Let's see what they're doing. And so this video was all about Patty Boyd, who I knew nothing about. She was George Harrison's wife, and I just saw another little quick video. He had met her on when they were making a Beatles movie. She was a model, but she also became Eric Clapton's wife. And this I've been thinking about this book that I mentioned before, Lunar Men. Here's the broken dust cover. I've got a nice book scanner where I can actually, in fairly short order, scan about 100 pages and then create a Word document out of that, so I can, a Word or a PDF, so that I can mark it up and manipulate it and have fun with it. But Sam and another guy have sent me a couple of Ross Douthat pieces in the last couple of months that sort of get into this. I was noticing that the same channel, Freewheeling, also had a really interesting piece that I had listened to. What fueled? No, not fueled Fleetwood Mac. That one I'm going to want to watch too. But what led to the demise of Laurel Canyon's Freewheeling, Society of Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll? Now, the answer to all of these videos is obvious. And if you listen and you watch that Patty Boyd video, the answer to her unhappiness is obvious. People don't do well without limits. And when you get a high status man as, there's a certain trial going on in New York City. It has to do with a very wealthy, high status man and the fact that they're high status men very quickly become womanizers. I'll say it that way. I've been watching OJ Made in America. My wife had never seen it. I had seen it a couple of times, and I'm watching that with my wife right now. And again, O.J. Simpson coming, high school, college, seems like just the nicest guy you could ever imagine, and he becomes a monster. And you just look at these figures that are now, we would use the word mythic in musical history for this incredible transformation that popular music has undergone and world music has undergone. And it made monsters out of these men and destroyed the women that loved them. I'm sure it made some women monsters too. And it just provokes all of these thoughts that, well, one of the things that I told Jordan was that, listening to his story, you can just see how the spirits are riding us. So one of the points that Rick Beato's friend makes is, and this was a point that was made by the guy who founded Patreon in a video that I never made, but probably should go back because someone had sent me that video, and it was interesting too, because he talked about the follow and how the follow created an opportunity for creators, boy, the language we use, creators to develop a following, et cetera, et cetera. And this guy is talking about the fact that I'm a little hesitant to just use some of the video because you never know. I really don't want to put all of this into the video, and then I use a little bit of his video, and then he, basically tells YouTube to stop letting me use any of his video, and so on and on and on. So I'm not going to use any of his video, but I'll leave a link in it below. That I also want to do a video on this whole monoculture words that fudge, monoculture. What's a monoculture? How artists are bigger and smaller than ever. It's a great video. It's a great conversation. It very much deals with it. But talking about how the fact that it used to be that these creators, and of course the creators and the record labels were all sort of fighting one after another, and how the internet really just sort of destroyed that. So now Taylor Swift and other people can go directly to their audience. But And then this guy who works in the business of booking live events basically says Taylor Swift doesn't have to release another album. She could do stadium after stadium after stadium after stadium for the next 4 years and, not release a new song. And it's not just Taylor Swift. Many people that you and I probably never heard of are big enough in this very strange world where the gatekeepers are gone that they can just go. But that then leads to the question of, well, who's writing who in this? Because the musicians, they're evolving, yeah. But who's writing who? How is this working?
So then start getting involved in startup companies. The very first one was MP3.com back in 1998, I suppose.
Wow. So when you were thinking about what kinds of startup companies you felt were worthy of your time and attention, what were the kinds of things you were looking for?
Well, the most fundamental was okay. All right, interesting. So I have to break it up into two different buckets because the buckets were actually completely different. Over here is tactical. Right? So I knew that I needed to just learn how to do this thing. So I needed opportunities that would give me the maximum exposure to the stuff so that I could go up the learning curve as fast as possible. So that means, generally speaking, companies that will be doing they have big aspirations, right? They're shooting big, they're playing in the big leagues, and also for whatever reason, I can somehow have an intimacy. I can get involved and be able to kind of get exposure to a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, the particulars didn't matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time, there were two. One was in a certain kind of biotech. The other one was MP3 in media. And of course, then strategically, back to McLuhan, it needed to be in the internet, and it needed to be something in the category of media.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I noticed when I sort of did my analysis, music, well, I didn't care about music at all,
Mm-hmm.
and knew nothing about the industry or anything about it, seemed to be the thing that was ripe at that moment. Right. So it was going to hit. The way it was going to hit, it was going to hit. I was actually doing this research. It was going to hit in about a year. And roughly 6 months into that year, I came across the folks that were starting this company, mp3.com, and joined. And so that was the arc. And so I was able to join very early, like right in the
Yeah.
beginning of it. So get a vastly outsized participation, like
Yeah.
1,000 times outsized participation. I was a VP. I was hired as a VP with exactly zero business experience.
Yeah.
Even to the point that I didn't even know what a spreadsheet was. You need to understand, like, I didn't even know what a spreadsheet was.
Wow.
I'd never run one, and I was like, so what do? You open up Excel and you start playing with it, and of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
build complex spreadsheets. At the end of the day, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Scary a little bit because there's a fear of like, wait a minute, am I going to fail? But as it turns out, it's craziness, and so you can
Yeah.
get
1998 was very interesting, and you talk about MP3. For a lot of people today, they won't know anything about this, but this was a radical reorienting of a very significant cultural layer, which was music.
Yep.
Where before, of course, with music, sheet music was a revolution that happens in the 19th century. Then in the 20th century, you get recordings, audio recordings. And then, of course, when I was in college, you had MTV and cable television, and you get music videos. And of course, when I was in college, they went from vinyl to CDs, so from analog to digital. And then, of course, then that sort of stalled, and then you had VHS. So this MP3 revolution was just astoundingly disruptive to the business of music. And that it's interesting that business has continued to be regularly disrupted. It's in some ways, music isn't really created by technology, but our relationship with music has been transformed by technology. And of course, this has everything to do with church, because it used to be that you had music because you had musicians and even, basically amateur musicians who would, a big thing in the Christian Reformed Church or in many churches was you gather around a piano with these books and you sing hymns together because that was your music. So now you're getting involved in MP3, which is going to just scare the heck out of the music industry because their entire cash cow is collapsing. They have no idea what to do. And so you don't even know the spreadsheet, but you get into this. What did you learn from that chapter? Because you're in the middle of a whole bunch of chaos and excitement.
Well, I learned a lot. And I should mention, by the way, just kind of like do a ligature of the moment. While I am I'm going to the office and working really hard, one of the more senior people says, we got to go to the movie theater like right now and go watch a movie called The Matrix. I think you're going to like it. So this is when The Matrix comes out 25 years ago.
Yeah. And The Matrix was like this revelation that happens in the culture, like whoosh.
Whoosh. Yeah. Because it hit it at the moment that you're talking about, like this movement when the analog hits the digital, and the digital is you can tell that it's something profound. You can tell that the level of disruption is not the same order as the previous kinds of disruptions, both in terms of speed and magnitude and how do you call it, intimacy or detail. So let's see, what did I learn? So one thing I learned was that maybe not entirely correctly, but this isn't as hard as it looks. Okay, so the senior people who I'm meeting, I'm like, wow, they're kind of like dysfunctional and crazy, and yet we're going, like we're knocking things out. So people who are less dysfunctional and crazy might actually be able to be more effective, which is powerful. Like as a 20-something, 26, 27-year-old, a feeling of permission to say, hey, I can do this. I can do this as well as they're doing it. Why not? Okay, second, I actually remember very clearly being in the room with the head of one of the major labels, I think the US division of one of the major labels, and noticing, let me see if I can say it right. The glass-eyed look on the face of a dinosaur that has not realized that the meteor has already hit. That's it. Right. So nothing I could say or do was going to do anything. I was endeavoring to actually help this individual. Like, how do I help you take advantage, notice what this is doing so that, what your world will be not a chance.
No.
They're already dead. No. It's just, it'll take some time to play out.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the next thing. And I learned a lot, tons and tons and tons about the actual, how do these kinds of waves unfold over time? How does it go from what would be sort of a Persian firstness through its developmental stages, from what I used to call like the guys in t-shirts with pizza stains, to the sweater vests, these are the VCs, to the guys with Lambos or private jets. Like there's an arc that it follows. And I've watched that happen now like 8 or 10 times. And so there's a pattern. And that was important. It was embodied. I was in it, in the middle of it and noticing it, but again, watching it.
Yep.
The third, and this has plays a big role in kind of the next major phase of my life, was how the pieces of our social infrastructure are connected. And this is what I mean specifically. We disrupted music entirely, except music was ultimately connected to law and politics in a way that doesn't obviously make sense. In a way that, say, for example, I don't know, pottery isn't. Right? Music is actually not ultimately an economic function. It's a political and legal function. And so as the technological piece, we were their business model was dead, their distribution model was dead, their production model was dead. Like it was clear that we had already won the war. And in a matter of single-digit years, everybody would be pivoting to what we were doing, except they had the ability to control judges and politicians, like control judges and politicians.
Yeah.
In a fashion that was not predictable from a naive perspective. In other words, naively, we had the law, we were not violating the law. But in fact, the way the law works is it's what the judges say. And if you own the judge, then guess what? You win.
Yeah.
Okay. Important. There's a verticality to the stack of this game, and the core is where the actual important stuff lives. So if you're going to be doing anything in the periphery, always notice whether and how it's connected to the deeper core, and either be able to not poke the core, or know how to get to the core and separate it out, carve it out. So that was a very profound lesson, which I learned again in my third company.
music, it isn't, and this is the funny thing, because you might say, okay, music is a business, and so therefore it's connected with law and politics, but it's like, no, it's more than that. Because when Bill Clinton, and again, now I'm an old guy, when Bill Clinton plays Don't Stop, when Bill Clinton plays music as part of a political campaign, you're getting interesting interactions happening here.
Hmm.
And so the politicians are not just interested in music because the music in the music industry has money. And I live in the city of Sacramento, and so I do have a sense of the interaction between politics and money, which is
Ah,
very real. Two of my kids work in politics, so it's very interesting. But music isn't music isn't just another industry.
nope. Nope. Well, we can also invoke the powers and principalities if we want to go,
Yes, we can.
because that's at the very center of that layer cake, or that nested spheres. And you said earlier that technology didn't create music, and of course, God created music
Yeah.
as one of the sort of the central sacraments, or whatever, liturgies probably is the best way. Yeah, central liturgies. And so the powers and principalities are deeply interested in being able to make sure that music is controlled.
Yes.
And then, of
Yes.
course, all the rest of the layers then participate in that with, industry, as it usually does in our
Yeah.
culture, carrying a heavy load because mammon is such a powerful tool in that
Yes.
force.
But we can also get a sense of the fact that we can also get a sense of the spiritual reality of technology itself. Because, I mean, obviously, at first, the music industry tried to first stop technology and say, well, we're not going to go here. And then they discovered Napster, and no, I'm sorry, it's not going to be stopped. So now we're going to try to control it, and
Mhm.
we're going to say, okay, well, we're going to do DRM. So we're going to do digital, we're going to basically lock it down, but technology found a way around that. So talk to me a little bit about what you learned about the spirituality of technology.
Uh, well, there's a new character who enters here. I want to say Quisling, but it's something else. It's a slightly different archetype. But I'm thinking Steve Jobs in particular.
Right.
Right. So this is somebody who is specifically, maybe violating people's hearts or presuppositions here, but he represents a mechanism whereby technology itself can be made subject to the kind of control that the previous generation did with the music industry.
Yes. Yes.
Industry.
Yes.
The music industry, although at the level of, if you think about powers and principalities, they don't like to do deals with each other because that obviously involves somebody subordinating to somebody else. But okay, so that's what ended up happening is the music industry brought in a member of the technology industry and formed an alliance, which involves certain amounts of bending the knee and kissing the ring and various kinds of structures. But it then created a new form that was able to buttress the impact of this other technological disruption. Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's I think how it works. You could
Yeah.
see the same thing happen with Web 2.0, for example.
Yep. 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 Because of course, again, I remember the first time I saw an I'm not going to say an iPad because, oh yeah, iPods are still an iPod. And I
Mhm.
remember a friend of mine, he has this little thing. And of course, now Apple has the, what was it? It was a terrible piece of software. Gosh, I hated that software.
iMusic.
Yeah, that was it. It was just a piece of crap software, and everything had to go through it, and it was like,
Ah,
and of
yeah,
course, I personally have always been a contrarian, so I had a Zune. I loved my Zune, but it
right.
was the same. It was the same shtick in terms of, okay, we're gonna nail it down in this walled garden, and everything's gonna be, we're gonna we now in facing the god of technology, the other gods are going to have to do a deal so that they cannot let this dragon of technology completely tear up the world that they have fashioned for themselves.
Yeah, something like they did a deal with Behemoth so as to avoid the consequences of Leviathan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This was the article that Sam sent me. Is the internet the enemy of progress? It's unusual when you find a strong dose of pessimism about the future of technological progress highlighted by one of the world's most leading techno-optimists. If you follow the combative venture capital of Mark Andreessen on X, you would have seen him giving wide circulation to this passage from Michael Crichton's 1995 Jurassic Park. The book is a great book. I read it in the 90s and really enjoyed it. It's better than the movie, and the original movie wasn't bad either. He's basically talking about that the internet. Why would the internet be the end of innovation when the internet seems to be spawning so much innovation? And the answer is that it seems that what you really need for creative transformation are small groups of people. This kind of maladaptive cultural shift, Hansen argues, is what's happening with below replacement fertility. For a variety of social and economic reasons, the developed world has converged on a reproductive model that's already leading to rapid population aging and could lead, with South Korea, to blinking red indicator light at outright population collapse. And so they're talking about population collapse, and they're talking about culture here. Basically, what he's talking about is homogenization, and how homogenization is a bad thing culturally, and it leads to decadence, and things sort of devolve. And what you really need is small groups of people who are living together, sharing things together, and then you tend to get this very creative synergy by which new things develop. And this is part of the reason why often these things come out of locality. That whole question about Laurel Canyon. You had, in the Led Zeppelin biography, you've got a tiny group of people that are just sort of hyper about the blues, and they're learning together, and all of this new stuff sort of bursts forth. And in Laurel Canyon, you have this tiny little group of people that are sort of working on this, and then, in some ways, via technology, this stuff just spreads all out throughout the world. It, of course, made me think about this little corner, because what doesn't? And it made me think about the little group of people that are just playing with things now. And I thought Jordan Hall said it very well in the conversation. Basically, as long as the world doesn't find us, that's kind of what I translated into my mind. You can continue to enjoy Laurel Canyon or Greenwich Village or something of that nature, as long as the world doesn't find you and give you, on one hand, what you think you want, which is probably also the death of what you really want. So God bless the small and obscure, for they will not be destroyed by the world. And we're in this time when, as in this Rick Beato, monoculture is sort of a funny thing, because on one hand, there's never more diversity and never more interconnections, but on the other hand, we're losing the diversity, and we're losing the capacity to create culture in a healthy way. What if some of what's powerful about Jordan Hall's story is that he, like he said, he didn't what he looked for was wholeness, in many ways, wholesome. That's a word that he uses on a lot of those interviews. And when you look at and you listen to these stories about rock bands, it's almost exactly the other way around. Even just looking at this little channel, Freewheeling, 17,000 subs. It's interesting. He's got some major subs, started about a year ago. Path to Genius, Jimmy Page. I'll probably dig into some of these videos. And then it also interested me that when I watch his videos, I think about this weird dynamic of seeing and hearing and the pictures, it reminded me of cinema essay videos that use clips of the iconography of our day, clips from the major motion pictures of Star Wars and cinematic universe, and then the monologue goes on underneath, which is what carries the essay. But the pictures of C-3PO or Captain America or Iron Man or Neo, these sort of capture the eyes while the subtext works on the brain. And now, listening to this biography of Led Zeppelin in audiobooks, I think about how YouTube manages to, in some ways, do a better job, in that what I find I do when I listen to this audiobook is I pause the audiobook and then I go dig up the song or the artist that the book is talking about, so I can sort of have some orientation. But these people who are braving the copyright algorithm, who are putting these videos together, are sort of doing it for me. But I find there's sort of a capture that it's doing on me. I don't have any savings throws against mind control. And so, you look at this video, you look at this, I should find that the end of the follow video. Yeah, this is Jack Conte, and he's talking about, basically creating a funnel and how the algorithms disrupted all of this. And then, of course, now Patreon wants to reconnect it. But there's way more going on here because, of course, as Rick Beato's friend says, maybe I'll dare to play a little bit.
There's direct communication. Now, gaining people's
That's the follower.
attention, that's a different problem, right?
Right.
Used to be that, well, you'd have the record company, you have the promotional video, you had all of these things. But now we're trying to gain people's attention. Before, the people were able to commit to a follow. And again, I can't help but watch this and think, things are riding us. Things are riding us. And it's increasingly obvious. Modernity sort of lured us into imagining we were in charge, that we were somehow in control, but we're not in control. We're not in control. Anyway, sorry to end it on such a, well, I am a Christian, which means I'm an optimist. Leave a comment.